from my critics.
Good morning, everyone. Calling of the roll, please.
Snell?
Here.
Here.
Fleur?
She's not here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here.
Here. Thank you. As noted yesterday, Governor Doyle originally scheduled for an 8:30 appearance. Will be here around 10. And if it's Doyle time, we won't know where it is, so what exactly time. So we will proceed with the meeting, and I apologize if we interrupt the meeting when he arrives, because he holds the keys to the treasure. Approval of the minutes of the meeting of the Board of April 7, 2006. The minutes have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. At this time, I would call upon Regent Bradley to discuss the character of Regent Axtell.
He's careful to whom he gives the big jobs. Roger, my friend, what an honor it is to be able to offer some remarks about your 7 distinguished years as a member of this board. You are truly one of the great regents in the history of the University of Wisconsin system. You know, first impressions are lasting impressions. The first time I was sitting in a room with Roger Axtell, I was inclined to listen. Here was a person who was the Vice President of Worldwide Marketing at the Parker Pen Company, had authored 9 books on international travel, protocol, etiquette, was the advisor to 3 governors, and was one of the most experienced regents. And here he was in a room with brand new regents willing to offer us his experience. And the first thing I ever heard Roger Axtell say was this: other than my marriage and raising my children, this is the most important work I have ever done. Now, Roger Axtell is a wordsmith, and he said important work. And Roger indeed has done a lot of work. And I'll refer to his many accomplishments and his leadership roles in a moment when I read his resolution. Roger, your colleagues on the board hold you in awe. We wonder, how does Roger do it all? And how does he do it all so well? Well, for some insight, I contacted Mitzi Axtell. Mitzi is Roger's sweetheart from the 50s at the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority on this campus. And I said, Mitzi, you must be so proud of Roger. And she said, oh, I am. She said, wouldn't you like to be the advisor to 3 governors? I said, well, yes, I'd be honored. She said, and wouldn't you like to be sought after all over the country as a speaker? I said, well, that would be quite an honor. And she said, and wouldn't you like to be a world-ranked tournament tennis player? I said, well, sure. And she said, well, so would Roger. So, how does Roger do it all? I think there are 3 reasons. The first reason is Roger is just so darn talented. I mean, he's intelligent, he's insightful, perceptive, he's diligent, and he is a man of great integrity. The second reason is Roger is just plain smooth. Ask anybody who has worked with Roger. Let me give you an example of what I call Axtell smooth. Roger and I were seated at a table of in a room with over 300 very, very happy Badger alumni fans at the Capital One Bowl game in Orlando. Paula Bonner, the president of the Alumni Association, came to our table and said, "Roger, would you give a toast on behalf of the Board of Regents?" And Roger very modestly said, "No, no, no, no." He said, "That's for the younger regents to do." And without even looking at me, he said, "Mark will give the toast." And I said, "Roger, I am in no condition to give a toast to 300 alumni." And I said, "Even if I was, I need time to figure out what to say." He acted as if I hadn't said a thing. He reached in his pocket, pulled out his shiny Parker pen. He said, "Here, write this down." Roger proceeded to dictate a 40-word, beautifully phrased toast that was perfect for the occasion. So I got up on stage. I recited that toast word for word to resounding applause of over 300 alumni in the room. I was walking off the stage, going back to our table. This elderly woman who was decked in Bucky Badger regalia from half all the way down to her socks, and she touched me on the arm and she said, "Young man, you certainly have a way with words." That's what I call Axtell smooth. There's a third reason for Roger's success, and this comes from Roger himself. He has said time and again, every bit of success that he has enjoyed in his career, he owes to the education that he received at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. G.K. Chesterton said, "Education is the window to a society's soul." And Roger, I think your example is the window through which we will look to examine our dedication and our commitment to public higher education in Wisconsin. Now, would you please join me as I read your resolution? The resolution of appreciation. Whereas Roger E. Axtell has provided outstanding service and remarkable contributions to public higher education in Wisconsin during his 7 years as a member of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, and whereas Roger has been an active and thoughtful member of the Education Committee, through which he has demonstrated his keen interest in accountability, international education, and overall educational excellence, and whereas through his services as a member and leader of the Executive and Business, Finance, and Audit Committees, Regent Axtell showed his commitment to the UW System's tradition of sound stewardship and financial preparedness, and whereas Roger made significant contributions to the university's long-term future as the chair of the Revenue Authority and Other Opportunities subgroup of the Charting a New Course Strategic Planning Initiative, and as a member of the Governor's Task Forces on International Education, UW System Compensation, and UW System Accountability. And whereas Regent Axtell worked to find capable and dedicated academic leaders through his participation on Regent search committees for the chancellors of UW-Whitewater, UW-Stevens Point, UW-La Crosse, UW Extension, and the UW System President. And whereas through his service on the committees for the Regent Teaching Excellence and Academic Staff Excellence Awards, Regent Axtell accurately recognized truly outstanding teaching, research, and public service throughout the UW system. And whereas Regent Axtell has served as a valuable and eloquent advocate for the vitality of the state's public university system, offering his time, extraordinary talents, and sense of humor in the spirit of the Wisconsin idea, be it resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System extends its most sincere gratitude to Regent Emeritus Roger E. Axtell for his outstanding leadership and invaluable service to the UW system and the citizens of Wisconsin. Signed, David G. Walsh, President, Board of Regents. Congratulations.
President Riley also presented the medallion, I also have a certificate that I would like to read. It's a certificate of appreciation presented to Roger Axtell. It reads, "On behalf of the citizens of the state of Wisconsin, I would like to thank you for your service to the state of Wisconsin during your tenure as a member of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System. Your commitment to public service and the contributions you have made to the state of Wisconsin are greatly appreciated. My best to you in your future endeavors." Signed, Governor James E. Doyle.
This is kind of fun. I've been thinking the only thing I can do to top this is go home and die. First of all, I want to thank Libby for that wonderful gesture yesterday. Some of you weren't here, but she had arranged a wonderful singing tribute from students at Parker High School in Janesville. They drove all the way up here in formal wear and gave me a little serenade. And I really thank you. I'll never. I wish you could have put it in a bottle someplace. Jeff, I want to welcome you particularly. I'm delighted to have you in my chair. You give me one other possibility. Now, you are at the head of the alphabet list. That's important when you have roll call votes. You got to quickly remember whether to say yes, no, or no. But in the past 7 years, I think I've heard at least 12 or 13 regents give their farewell speeches. And to a person, they have been very provocative, very philosophical, very profound. And I just decided in preparing for this that I can't emulate them. I'm not going to get into high-flown verbiage on the values of education. You can all do it better than I can. So instead, I'm choosing to just tell you 3 stories, 3 true stories, and there will be a little moral at the end of each one. The first story is that if you want to honor someone, dedicate a book to them. And I had a man that I worked with at Parker who helped me write a book on marketing. He was a great marketing person. And when we got done, I wanted to dedicate the book to him, but I wanted it to be a surprise. I didn't tell him ahead of time. So when I got the manuscript proofs, I sent them out to him in San Francisco. He had retired, and I said, "Art, read through this and tell me if I got it right." He said, "All right." Week went by, nothing happened. 2 weeks went by, nothing happened. 3 weeks went by. 4th week, I thought, oh boy, I really messed up. So I called him, I said, "Art, did you get the manuscript?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, what do you think of it?" He said, "I don't know, I haven't gotten past the dedication yet." Now, I'll come to the moral of that story at the end. Regarding book dedications, I will give you one footnote admonition. If you are going to write a book, dedicate the first book to your spouse. I dedicated my 3rd book to my spouse. And I have been in hot water ever since. So I'd like to somewhat make amends right now to introduce my wife, Mitzi. She's put up with me for 51 years of marriage, 3 wonderful children, 6 grandchildren. And if I count my accomplishments in life, it's those, but she raised the children because I was gone so much. So I owe her so very much. But remember, the first book, not the 3rd. The next story pertains in a way to Regent Loftus, who, as you all know, ran for governor in 1990. Now, I don't think you knew this, Tom, but I ran for governor one time at Badger Boys State. 1948, Badger Boys State. Well, you know how that works. There's 750 boys from high schools all over the state, juniors in high school. You go to Ripon College, sponsored by the American Legion, and you learn about government. You form little cities and so on and so forth. When you come in, you're given a number, and if you're given an even number, you're a nationalist. If you're an odd number, you're a Federalist Party. So it's split right down the middle, couldn't be more equal. So you have the 2 parties vying against each other. Well, the fellows from Kenosha, my hometown, decided we're going to go for the top
we're going to go for the governor, and Roger, you're the guy. Well, there was a primary, of course. There were 11 in the primary. 11. And somehow, I don't know how, but I won it. My opponent from the other party was named Alan Redmond from Shawano, Wisconsin. And the big night came when we were supposed to give our speeches and then the vote. And I won the coin toss, and I spoke first. And Tom, I gave the best political speech I've ever given in my life. Alan got up and spoke about how great it was to be at Badger Boys Stadium. When he got done, I wanted to vote for him. Well, of course, when he got done, 400 guys carried him off on his shoulder, streaming, coming down, balloons and all this. And I'm standing over in the corner kind of lonely. This very kindly American Legionnaire came over and put his arm around me and he said, Roger, you have learned more tonight than Alan has. You have learned the lesson of disappointment. And I said, with all due respect, sir, I'd rather be learning the lesson that Alan is learning. I'll learn the lesson of disappointment some other time. Once again, I'll give you the moral of that story. The last story, we at Parker Penn had a tradition that when anybody ever left the company, even if they'd been there for 3 or 4 years, we would give them a Dutch treat dinner at the Elvis Club. Everybody would chip in, and we'd all put $10 in the pot for a gift. Well, we had this one fellow, we hadn't been there very long, we didn't know him too well, but we did the same thing. And after the dinner, he got up to speak, and he said, thank you. My wife and I want you to know that we have really liked Janesville. We like the schools, we like the health system, we like the parks. It was the people we didn't like. Everybody's going around saying, can I have my $10 back? Well, now, how do I tie these 3 stories together? The dedication of a book is wonderful, but if you really, truly want to be honored, be appointed to this board. It's one of the finest honors in the state. The governor said to me when we flew down to the bowl game, he said, this is the most sought-after appointment in government. See, Kevin and David, I think, would attest to that. He said it's one of his most difficult tasks, and you have all been honored in this way. So I want you to know that it is a fine, fine honor, and something that you should be proud of the rest of your life. Secondly, I'm glad Alan Redmond won. I got that disappointment behind me, and it's been a great ride ever since. And I count being appointed to the board as one of the luckiest of them all. So I'm glad I got the disappointment out of it. Finally, a fellow that it was the people he didn't like. For me, it's just the opposite. What I enjoyed most are the people. Those of you around the square table here, those of you in the balcony back there, cheap seats, all of the staff, and particularly the chancellors. I want to take a moment to, they tell us very early in the game that one of our most important tasks is picking chancellors, and if we do that, we do it well. Well, I think we've done a dandy job. They are all fine, qualified, educated, personable leaders as well as academicians. So I do want to especially honor them. I've had a chance, I think, to work with each of them in one form or another. And I'm very proud of working with you, and I honor you. I do want to say one thing about that. As you know, I usually sit over there on that side, so I've always got my back to the chancellors. And for 7 years, I've always felt vibrations. Now, vibrations were very clear. I wish those amateurs would get the hell out of our way and so we could run this place. Well, in closing, some of you may remember when General Douglas MacArthur was fired from the job as Supreme Commander in Korea, remember? And by Truman, it was a very embarrassing moment for him. But he had an appearance between a joint session of Congress. And he appeared in his full military uniform, 4 stars. And he said, I have a quote from West Point. Old soldiers never die. They just fade away. Remember that? Well, I'm going to paraphrase that. Old regents never die. They just lose their parking permit.
Thank you very much, Roger. At this time, call on Regent Pruitt.
Roger, you are a tough act to follow, both to this podium and as a member of this board. If I might just say that from my first day here, and I know from all of us, you've been a role model for what it means to be a regent. And I know I speak for all our colleagues here, past and present, to say it's truly been an honor to serve you. Thank you. I've long believed that one of the most difficult and challenging jobs we have within the university system, perhaps the most difficult and the most challenging, must be that of interim chancellor. In the best of times, with full authority and long tenure, being a chancellor is, I suspect, a bit like herding cats. But when we ask a person to serve in this position with a promise that they won't be there for long, the challenge is even greater. As I've met and come to know the individuals who have been willing to accept these assignments, I've come to appreciate that what they share beyond some questionable sanity is a deep and profound love of their university and the willingness to make a sacrifice to ensure that no harm comes in an always difficult time of transition. We saw those qualities with Virgil Nylander in River Falls, Bob Greenstreet in Milwaukee, Margaret and Marv, who are to be recognized a little bit later today. And we certainly see them in Vicki Lord Larson. Vicki Lord Larson loves Eau Claire and Eau Claire's University of Wisconsin. She joined the faculty in 1973 and stayed for 18 years as department chair and dean. When the call came from Kevin Riley, her answer was clear and unequivocal. As Vicki was quoted as saying in the press release announcing her appointment, quote, "I will be here as long as the university needs me. My goal is to do what is best for UW Eau Claire, no matter how long it takes." Chancellor Larson, this is yet another chapter in a lifetime of service to UW Eau Claire and the university system, and this board, on behalf of many others, is profoundly grateful. Could you come and join me while I read this proclamation and resolution of appreciation? Whereas Dr. Vicki Lord Larson, Interim Chancellor at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire since March 2005, approached this position with a deep love for students and a deep appreciation of the campus and the UW system. And whereas she worked tirelessly to carry on the tradition of excellence at UW-Eau Claire, and whereas Lord Larson promoted the university's strengths and needs through conversation and advocacy with community leaders and area legislators, and whereas Vicki greatly assisted with the continued success of the campus's comprehensive campaign and has worked tirelessly on 3 key initiatives: the Chippewa Valley Nano STEM Initiative, a new academic building for the campus, and the Davies Center Project. And whereas Dr. Lord Larson's service as interim chancellor followed 37 years of dedicated service to the University of Wisconsin system, including teaching, administrative, and consulting roles at UW-Eau Claire, UW-Oshkosh, and the UW system. And whereas Vicki has made numerous contributions toward improving the status of women throughout the UW system, through her membership and leadership of committees that examine the opportunities for and standing of women on campus and across the system. And whereas, above all, in her service as interim chancellor, Vicki Lord Larson kept the best interests of UW-Eau Claire students at heart, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system hereby offer thanks and commendation to Dr. Vicki Lord Larson for her service as interim chancellor, at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and wishes her well in all future endeavors. And be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of UW System President Kevin P. Riley, Vicki Lord Larson be recognized as Chancellor Emeritus with all the rights, privileges, distinction, and responsibilities such status may carry.
Roger, I'm going to be flunking retirement a second time, and I'm going to be editor-in-chief of a publishing company. So please give me your card before you leave. Thank you. It's been a very interesting 15 months. I haven't been bored for one single minute. Being back on a university campus after 4 years in the business world has been energizing. It's been rewarding, and I have to tell you, it's been enlightening. But it truly has been a labor of love. In fact, the 32 years I've spent in the UW system and 2 years in the Wisconsin public school system truly has been a labor of love. But I want to say that I'm especially thankful to the students, to the faculty, and to the academic staff, and you heard one of those academic staff yesterday, Patty C., and the wonderful administrative team I have at UW-Eau Claire. I think collectively we've kept the momentum going at UW-Eau Claire, and yes, you have picked a great chancellor for UW-Eau Claire. I know he's going to keep it going and keep our marks of excellence in the forefront. I want to take, since I have this opportunity and haven't had this opportunity to stand up here before, I want to talk about one of your initiatives. I want to take a moment to add my voice to the one initiative that's near and dear to my heart, among many, but this one is special. It's your initiative to assist students from the lowest 2 quintiles who are intellectually capable and highly motivated to fulfill their dream of pursuing a college education. This is a passion of mine. I come from rural northern Wisconsin, from a family of modest means. In fact, where I come from, rural and northern Wisconsin, happens to be a linguistic redundancy. My father died when I was 10, and my mother worked hard to ensure that I would have the opportunity to pursue a bachelor's degree. She never said, if you go to college, Vicki. She always said, when and where you go to college. Now, I have to confess, when I selected Madison, she truly believed that I was going off to Sin City. But she allowed me to come, and I was able to get my bachelor's degree from here. It was scholarship money and research grants and an incredibly supportive husband that I was able to earn a master's and a doctorate degree. If it hadn't been for these supportive people and the financial support, I would not be a first-generation college graduate. And I want to add that it's not just financial support. You need people support when you come from the home that I came from, and I had a great family support. But don't lose sight of the supportive people part, and not only is it important to get the financial aspect. I firmly believe that we cannot lose any human capital if we are to succeed as a state and if we are to succeed as a nation. So I urge you, push the envelope. Don't give up. Keep pushing the envelope to assist students who are coming from families from the lowest 2 quintiles. I'll always be interested in the work you do in supporting public higher education. So let me conclude by saying best wishes to all of the members of the Board of Regents, to the University of Wisconsin system staff, President Riley, to the chancellors, and to the provosts. Having been one, I fully understand. In creating a climate, and I want to emphasize, in creating a climate where our faculty, our staff, and our students succeed. And in turn, they will collectively move the state of Wisconsin forward. Now as I return to the business world and flunk retirement for a second time, I plan on hiring graduates from the University of Wisconsin system campuses. In fact, that will be one of my jobs. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this world-class system of higher education, for being a student, for being a faculty member, and for allowing me to be an administrator. Thank you and best of luck.
Call on Regent Burmaster.
Good morning. It is my privilege to read the resolution of appreciation for UW Colleges and UW Extension Interim Chancellor Marvin Van Keckerichs. Whereas Dr. Marvin Van Keckerichs has shown exemplary dedication and leadership as interim chancellor at both the University of Wisconsin Extension and the recently realigned UW Extension UW Colleges, and whereas interim Chancellor Van Keckerichs provided steady leadership for the complex administrative integration of UW Colleges and UW Extension, setting a positive tone for future collaborations and involving faculty and staff from both institutions in collegial discussions. And whereas Marv has supported innovative economic development efforts, including UW Extension's role in establishing and managing the Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Network, a statewide partnership to create jobs by providing specialized services for second-stage businesses. And whereas Van Keckerichs demonstrated a strong commitment to diversity and multiculturalism by moving forward a UW Extension Multicultural Awareness Training Initiative, facilitating cross-institutional collaboration on important multicultural issues and funding diversity partnership grants. And whereas Marv led a strategic effort to increase educational attainment among Wisconsin workers by providing greater access to college courses and degree completion programs for working adults in what will become the UW's Adult Student Initiative. And whereas, as a strong advocate for the UW's value and accountability, Marv met with countless state, county, and federal leaders, news media, and editorial boards, and citizens statewide. And whereas Dr. Van Keckerichs managed significant funding and personnel reductions while preserving the core outreach and public service missions of UW Extension to serve citizens and the state in the true spirit of the Wisconsin idea, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System hereby offers thanks and commendation to Dr. Marv Van Keckerichs for his service as interim chancellor and notes its deep appreciation for his continued service as a UW Extension provost. Marv?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to address the board, and I thank you for the resolution of appreciation. I just want to start my comments by offering an apology to Regent Crane. She will note that I do not have a name tag, and my only explanation really is that they're in the process of issuing the third one for me during the time you've been the Regent member. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. I really want to extend an appreciation also to the many faculty and staff across both of the institutions, both UW colleges and UW Extension. They've stepped up to the challenges involved in exploring opportunities for capturing synergies across our two institutions. They've openly engaged in some contentious occasionally and sometimes difficult discussions about how we might come together and achieve some of those synergies. And I couldn't be prouder of the work that they have done. And I particularly want to express my appreciation to the UW College's central staff, because in the last 4 months they've been incredibly supportive as I learned about a whole new set of issues and experiences. And in particular, I'd point to Margaret Cleek for her leadership. I appreciate it very much. She's a valued colleague, friend, sometimes co-conspirator. Thank you, members of the board and President Riley, for giving me the opportunity to make a small contribution toward integrating the UW colleges and extension. These institutions are dear to my heart. We share a common dedication to providing greater access and excellence in meeting the needs of the people of Wisconsin. And I believe we have a bright future under the leadership of our new Chancellor, David Wilson, and I look forward to continuing to contribute all I can to the creation of that future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Call on Regent Seminis.
It is my great honor to read the resolution for this next distinguished interim chancellor. But before I get started, I had a few words. When she was called to serve our great state of Wisconsin, Margaret Cleek accepted this call. As interim chancellor, she has brought energy, experience, and knowledge to her position as UW College's interim chancellor. Instead of having one campus to walk across to deal with issues, Margaret had to hop in her car, pay around $2.35 at the time for gas, to drive up to places such as Barron County, then on to Manitowoc County, and finally driving down to Waukesha County, where she's used her experience and research in writing about divorces to try to deal with that situation in Waukesha County. This effort and dedication that this great woman has for forwarding the Wisconsin idea is noble, and we as the Board of Regents and UW system, and most of all the people of the great state of Wisconsin, are very proud to have you served in this position. So I ask that Margaret Cleek come up here so I can read her resolution of appreciation. Whereas Dr. Margaret Cleek served admirably for 18 months as interim chancellor of the 13 freshman, sophomore University of Wisconsin colleges. And whereas Margaret provided strong leadership on the effort to increase effectiveness and efficiency through integration of several important administrative functions of the statewide UW colleges and the University of Wisconsin Extension. And whereas Dr. Cleek inspired the 13 freshman sophomore campuses to be open to cooperation and integration with UW Extension through her actions as an accessible and intelligent role model. Whereas during the time of intense public scrutiny, she has worked tirelessly to lead strategic efforts that increased understanding about how the UW colleges serve communities across the state and the role of the UW colleges in providing a foundation to a bachelor's degree. And whereas Dr. Kleek demonstrated her unwavering commitment to the UW College's mission of access within the UW system and across the state. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System commends Dr. Margaret Kleek for her outstanding service as Interim Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin Colleges, and thanks her for her continued service as Provost and Vice Chancellor of the UW Colleges. Signed, David Walsh, President of UW.
You can be assured that this plaque will go in a place of honor in my new office at 432 Lake Street, which will sometime in the future be known as the Extension Colleges building, I believe. When I accepted the interim chancellorship, I had no idea what President Riley had in mind for the colleges and Extension. But actually, I went from shock to interest to dedication to the cause of integrating those two institutions. I must admit, Kevin, that when I left your office the first time, I was thinking, what is he thinking? And 18 months later, I think to myself, you know, this was a darn good idea, and I appreciate it. I want to thank my colleagues as well in the UW colleges and my new colleagues in UW Extension for their hard work, their dedication, and the fun that we have together, especially Mark, and we are co-conspirators, so David is warning me about that. It was a tough 18 months. My respect for what the chancellors do has only grown, not shrunk by that experience. And I must admit I'm glad to be back with my provost colleagues for their hard work. I believe in the mission of the UW colleges. I am also a graduate of the UW system. I got my PhD at Madison. I was a faculty member here and then became an administrator in various levels. I stayed because I love this system and I love the colleges. And the thing that I love most about the colleges is, Regent Jimenez stated, is access. We provide access with quality. Please preserve that. Please preserve what the UW Colleges does for the state. It is so important. Those of you who have had a chance to come to one of our graduations can see that in the faces of every student and parent and relative in the audience. That is what's near and dear to my heart, and will always be. It is a great institution. So I thank you. It was only an honor. It was an honor to serve as interim chancellor for the UW College. Thank you.
You really want to do it over, Roger? Next matter is report of the May 3rd, 2006 meeting of the Hospital Authority Board. The written report has been provided. The board's representatives are Regent Axtell, Rosenzweig, and Smith. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to add a couple comments to what's happened in the last month. If you will recall, we passed a resolution about TPA. Last night, TPA, Taxpayer Protection Act, son of Tabor, was defeated, the Assembly version, and I don't have any more word except that the report is that it will not pass. And to that end, I want to comment that I appeared before two of the committees. I appeared first before the Joint Committee of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee and the Special Senate Committee on Taxpayer Protection Act, and then I subsequently appeared before the Special Senate Committee on the Taxpayer Protection Act. But in doing that, I appeared at the first meeting with two of the chancellors, and I just want to comment that a lot of people, when we first put our toes in this water, suggested that perhaps this wasn't our role and that what was going to happen was going to happen and that we had more to lose than to state our position. The simple matter, though, is it was the right thing to do, and we did it. And the real strength of our message wasn't from the President of the Board of Regents appearing before these committees. I repeated a lot of things they'd heard from others, but the real strength of the message was that the chancellors back in their own communities did the groundwork, did the trench work, sent out the message, had conducted meetings, and clearly those legislators in doubt listened to them. They listened to them because it was a hometown message. And I want to especially thank Chancellor Wells for coming to the first meeting of the joint meeting of the Assembly of the Ways and Means Committee and the Special Senate Committee on Taxpayer Protection Act. I did say that right. And I can be there and I can say things and I can be passionate, but the bottom line is when they hear from their people and they hear from people that it really impacts, it makes a difference. And Rick, I do very much appreciate you being there. And if you'd like to make any comment at this time about your appearance, and I don't mean to surprise you, but I've never seen you hesitate before. I did it. First time. But your message was strong, and we do appreciate it, and it made a difference. I will.
It's just that we wanted to make abundantly clear that if any version of the TPA passed, all of our campuses would be smaller. And I was charged a bit during the meeting and after with being chicken little when I said UW Oshkosh, after 3 TPA biennial budgets, would be 27% smaller with no tuition offset. And whether it's 27% smaller or 5% smaller, it needs to be 12% larger. And that's the issue, and that was the message I think that resonated, particularly when we focused at the older adult Wisconsinites that you've heard a number of people talk about. UW College's mission is very important in that older adult initiative. That is very important. People are hearing us in the community when we emphasize that. And I think that helped with some of our legislators to see that this was not the right thing to do. So, but thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. In addition, I wanted to mention that I received probably 15 separate emails from staff, academic staff and faculty, basically saying thanks for standing up, thanks for going forward and sending the message. And I want to comment on the message that I tried to present. We can all talk about government by referendum. I mean, that stands for anybody's complaint about that. But how it impacted us is really important, and that's because yesterday we just sat down and went through a number of initiatives. The Taxpayer Protection Act, if enacted, would basically take away all discretionary funding, and all we would really get is cost to continue. And the things we discussed yesterday are important for the vision. And when I laid that out to the committee and I talked to them about the role as an economic driver and research and the cycle of benefits and the need to improve access to low-income families and the need to maintain quality and retain star faculty and attract more, and with that the cycle of benefits increases. And finally, I listed all the donations of people that really are donations in a partnership. John Morgridge with $50 million after a previous $34 million gift matched by the state for $50 million, and Shell Lubar for $10 million, and going on with Cole and Granger and Nicholas. This got their attention, and what they realized is that we are part of the solution. We aren't the problem. We're not the black hole. We are part of the solution to the economic problems of this state and what's going forward. And later today, we're going to hear about an exciting new initiative that we introduced, and that's the Covenant. And we are fortunate in that we finally have some leadership that cares about higher education. I think what happened last night, it's my prediction, is the start of something good. And it's the start that they recognize that we are a great asset of the state of Wisconsin. That said, I had to work on something else during the month, and that was the Committee on Disciplinary Process. And in the June meeting, we will have before us the committee's proposal, which will be determined in 2 separate meetings during May, and all the comments from the faculties. These are tough decisions because we are dealing with some tough issues on disciplinary process. Our message is that we need the state of Wisconsin to be comfortable on how we handle egregious situations. That needs, however, to be balanced against the rights of the faculty and due process and with their jobs. But somewhere in the middle, we have to find a solution. But in June, we'll be dealing with that very tough issue, and I wanted you to know that it just isn't something that's been sitting there. The committee's been working hard, the faculties have been working hard, all comments have been submitted, and we'll be back to you in June. That ends my comments, and so I would now call on President Riley for his good comments.
Thank you, President Walsh. And let me just say on the matter of the TPA, David Walsh, when we called on him at any hour of the day, night, or weekend, was willing to go down to the legislature to call legislators to help us figure out strategy. He really took this on as a cause, and I think part of our success, he mentioned the work that the chancellor did all around the state, very big part of it, but a big part of it was his personal willingness to go down and fight the good fight. So we all are grateful to you for that, Dave. Let me mention a few good news items from around the system then. First, 238 students representing every one of our campuses in the system are at UW Stout this morning for the 7th annual UW System Symposium for Undergraduate Research and Creative Activity. The students are sharing their research and artistic expressions with state citizens as part of Research Week at UW Stout. Like our posters in the Rotunda event last month, the presentations address a wide variety of issues that can benefit the state. Many UW students also participated in the recent National Conference on Undergraduate Research held at the University of North Carolina in Asheville. And there were 19 students at that conference from UW River Falls and 27 from UW La Crosse. The Wisconsin PK-16 Leadership Council has honored a UW program that is giving back to the community with its 2006 Promising Practices Award. The award went to a collaborative reading program in UW Superior's Teacher Education Department. This collaboration allows UW Superior students who are preparing to become teachers to serve as tutors at Northern Lights Elementary School for student reading and language arts lessons. As you know, Regent Burmaster and Wisconsin Technical College System President Dan Clancy and Rolf Fagenke, the president of the Wisconsin Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, joined me on that PK-16 council. UW Extension has earned the University Continuing Education Association 2006 Recognition of Excellence Award for Innovations in Outreach and Engagement. The national award recognizes UW Extension's Diversity Program Development Initiative as a, quote, effective and replicable way, unquote, to reach a diverse and underserved audience. The initiative provides one-year grants of up to $10,000 to UW System campus-based continuing education divisions to work with community partners in providing new programs and services that reach racially and ethnically diverse audiences. Since the program began 6 years ago, the initiative has awarded 27 grants. So congratulations to UW Extension on this well-deserved honor for an outstanding program that fits with our system-wide diversity goals. Dean Jim Venenga of UW Marathon County reports that the campus there has received a $3.2 million congressionally directed grant to support the campus's planned expansion. The $6.8 million project would allow the campus to grow its services to the state through a 350-seat theater, outreach offices connecting the campus to the wider community, Wisconsin Public Radio studios, and a proposed institute for public policy and service. That institute will focus on internships and public service, faculty research, and nonpartisan public dialogue on important issues. Meanwhile, a $3 million county-funded science lab renovation is set to start in January on the Marathon campus. And I might say that Regent Bradley has been involved in a number of these efforts on the Marathon campus, and I think we're all very excited about them. UW Stevens Point College of Natural Resources Dean Christine Thomas has been named to the 11-member National Sporting Conservation Advisory Committee by the U.S. Secretary of the Interior. So our congratulations to Christine, who we know is a good sport, and our thanks for sharing university expertise beyond the boundaries of the state. UW-Milwaukee hosted Governor Doyle and the Milwaukee community this week for the grand opening of the pavilion at UWM. The new academic, athletic, and recreational facility is distinctive for its use of glass walls, which allow users to view nearby Downer Woods and the campus, and at the same time save energy. The pavilion's features include state-of-the-art academic facilities for the UWM College of Health Sciences, a student fitness center, athletic department offices, and a running track that is elevated above another gym area and uses natural light. Chancellor Santiago assures us that all the runners on that track will be naturally light. I'll close today with an impressive list of firsts from our UW institutions. Let's start again on this day by officially welcoming the first chancellor of both UW colleges and UW Extension, Dr. David Wilson. His start date was Monday, May 1st, and this is his first official Regent meeting. So welcome, David. Wisconsin patients may be among those to benefit from the discoveries of UW La Crosse researchers, the first ever researchers from that campus to receive a patent. Chemistry professor Aaron Monti, microbiology professor Mark Rott, and student Leah Defoe were honored last month for their patent of anti-infective agents derived from the Native American plant Comptonia peregrina. Shortly after we left Green Bay last month, UW Green Bay and Brown County UW Extension were among the co-hosts of the first Leadership Summit on Diversity, attended by nearly 200 community members. The event emphasized that inclusiveness must be a top priority if the region is to thrive during economic and demographic transitions. Chancellor Bruce Shepard reports that co-hosting the event was one of his proudest moments as chancellor. So thanks for your work there, Bruce. UW-Whitewater has once again ranked #1 on the Certified Public Accountant exam, a rank it's held for more than a decade. The ranking reflects the percent of undergraduate students achieving first-time pass rates on the national exam. So tax time next year, the heck with H&R Block, I'm going to see Chancellor Saunders. UW-Oshkosh was the first Wisconsin campus and the 10th campus nationwide to join the Environmental Protection Agency's Renewable Energy Initiative in 2003, and now UW-Oshkosh leads the state in renewable energy use. Since the first of the year, the university has purchased 11% of its electricity from Wisconsin Public Service through that utility's NatureWise Renewable Energy Program, which uses a mix of wind energy and biomass energy from a dairy farm and landfill in northeastern Wisconsin. Nationally, UW-Oshkosh ranks 23rd among all UW colleges and universities using renewable energy. Richard Davidson, a first-rate UW-Madison professor of psychology and psychiatry, was honored this week by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people of 2006. Dr. Davidson has devoted his career to understanding how the brain regulates human emotions. His studies of how psychological and social factors influence physical health really took off in the 1990s when he worked with the Dalai Lama to investigate the effects of medications on the brain. UW River Falls has signed a first-ever agreement with Unidad Académica Campesina Carmen Pampa of Bolivia, launching a cultural and academic exchange program between the two universities. Known as Project Bolivia, the partnership offers degrees in agriculture, veterinary medicine, nursing, teacher training, and ecotourism, all strong matches to UW River Falls' academic strengths. And today, let me send my best wishes, I know all of our best wishes, to the students and their families who will be celebrating their graduations across the UW system in the next couple weeks. We expect to graduate more than 30,000 of them, all prepared to contribute to the vitality and the quality of life in this state. These graduates are the university's greatest contributions to the state, and they've worked hard to make it to the commencement stage. Our congratulations to all of these soon-to-be alumni. And on a final note, this board may recall that it recently approved the awarding of an honorary degree by UW Parkside to Mr. Ron Turano. Chancellor Keating informed me yesterday that Mr. Turano has now been elected to the Senate in Italy, one of 5 international members of that body. So congratulations to him and to UW Parkside for honoring his accomplishments. Mr. President, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. At this point, we'll have a report of the Education Committee. I call on Regent Bernays.
Thank you. Well, the overarching theme of yesterday's Education Committee was the prioritization of diversity throughout the programs and mission of the system, and so our morning discussion of the full board timed us very well for our committee work. The committee first heard a presentation on reforming teacher education to create a more diverse workforce and to meet the needs of diverse learners. Francine Tompkins, Director of PK16 Initiatives for the UW system, reminded the committee of two of the goals for diversity in teacher preparation that we established last fall. First, the recruitment, training, and retention of a more diverse cohort of teachers, and the preparation of teachers to effectively work with diverse learners. We then heard about two collaborative efforts to meet both of those goals. Tamara Hortzman-Ripa of UW-La Crosse described the social justice mission of the Center for Cultural Diversity and Community Research at the UW-La Crosse and its efforts to increase diversity among educators. The center has had a particular focus on recruiting, mentoring, and preparing Hmong teachers through two multi-campus programs, Project Teach and Project Forward. The campuses involved are the UW-La Crosse, Eau Claire, Stout, Stevens Point, and Marathon County, and they include collaboration among institutions and PK-12 communities. The committee also heard from Dr. Hardin Coleman, who is the Associate Dean in the UW-Madison School of Education, regarding plans for the UW System Institute for Urban Education. Now, the Institute would provide expanded professional development opportunities in urban education for both pre-service and in-service teachers, placing students from participating UW institutions in Milwaukee for residential and teaching experiences in an urban setting with at-risk populations. And I want to point out that the Institute is included in the teacher education budget proposal that we heard about yesterday. Both of these collaborative efforts speak directly to the diversity goals that were outlined by this board yesterday, and the committee was very impressed with those reports. The committee then moved on to a discussion framed around the educational mission of the UW School of Medicine and Public Health's Milwaukee Clinical Campus. Now, as Regents, we've received some conflicting information from the various stakeholders involved. The School of Medicine and Public Health, Aurora Healthcare, community-based health groups in Wisconsin, and several Milwaukee clinical faculty members. The purpose yesterday was really to provide a forum for discussion of the Milwaukee Clinical Campus's commitment to Milwaukee's underserved populations through its partnership with the nonprofit Aurora Healthcare. We heard from some of the major players, and we did get a clearer sense of where the areas of disagreement are. What is at issue is a recently revised affiliation agreement with Aurora, through which the medical school students work with the urban poor at Aurora sites through its Milwaukee Clinical Campus. The medical school views this as an essential experience, as we do, for the medical students it prepares as future doctors. Several of the faculty from the clinical campus perceive, though, that Aurora is backing away from its commitment to provide medical care for Milwaukee's underserved, hence compromising the School of Medicine and Public Health's commitment and its articulated mission. In fact, several of those faculty have chosen not to sign the new employment contracts that are a part of the new affiliation agreement. Community health groups in Milwaukee and elsewhere have also weighed in, and Regents have received, I know, a number of letters from them. The committee heard first from Dean Farrell of the School of Medicine and Public Health, and he covered the differing responsibilities of the School of Medicine and of Aurora as spelled out in this newly revised affiliation agreement, which Dean Farrell assured us follows national models and it strengthens the public health mission of the school. Nick Turkle, Senior Associate Dean of the school's Milwaukee Clinical Campus and Senior Vice President of Aurora Healthcare, outlined the major concerns of the faculty physicians at the clinical campus. They are concerned about the new affiliation agreement, a revised campus structure and employment model, and about the continuing commitment to provide health care to underserved populations. Now, while admitting that Aurora has closed some of their urban facilities, Turkle emphasized, though, that Aurora's commitment to underserved populations remains strong and that, in fact, they commit more financial resources to these efforts than ever before. He gave some examples, including the facts that $156 million was spent in 04-05 on uncompensated care, and that 500,000 people were served last year by Aurora who had no health insurance. He also cautioned that there are really two distinct issues at stake: educating medical students and Aurora's commitment to the underserved. Next, we heard from Steve Schwartz of Wisconsin Citizen Action Network. He addressed the committee, and he named some of the ways in which Aurora was cutting back its care in underserved urban regions for financial reasons, leaving the populations there at risk, he believed. He cited a growing pattern of negligence and asked Regents to re-examine the new affiliation agreement. He was then followed by Dr. Anthony Otters, a Milwaukee physician and MCC faculty member. Dr. Otters asked the board for additional debate and discussion on the new affiliation agreement, which he asserted would have a dramatic effect on the underserved population. He particularly objected to the fact that the old agreement had been terminated 2 years before its expiration and that the new affiliation agreement had been approved without any public discussion or input. The affiliation agreement is not something, I'd like to point out, that the board acts on. Rather, it's one of the many actions that we have delegated to, in this case, the UW-Madison. Now, the new affiliation agreement was signed last winter, and it will go into effect on July 1st. This is going to remain a contentious area, probably, on which the differing sides might not agree, but on which we bring it to your attention as Regents. And it has raised our awareness, and the UW system has certainly taken note of this. I think we made clear yesterday that Regents will not waver in their stewardship role to oversee those UW programs over which it has authority, and that indeed includes the UW School of Medicine and Public Health. We care deeply about the school's commitment to serve Milwaukee's most vulnerable citizens through the various mechanisms they have in place, whether with Aurora, the city, or other community-based health care providers. Next fall, the School of Medicine and Public Health will return to this board with a full report on its activities in Milwaukee, and it is the expectation of Regents that work will have been accomplished in building trust among the conflicted parties in this debate. Last month, we approved the 06-07 request to the trust by UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee and noted at that time that we would act to accept the trust proffer in May. But before we could do that, we had to approve an amended request as stipulated by the Vilas will, and we then accepted the proffer. When the Vilas proffer came in just this week to the UW system, it didn't include the two music requests made annually by Madison and Milwaukee, and that turned out to be an oversight on the part of the trust, and they're sending an additional proffer. So yesterday, the Education Committee accepted the proffer with the understanding that the supplemental proffer would be a part of what the committee approved as just simply the Vilas proffer. So anyway, the revised request we approved yesterday included the right amount of money, proffered in total by the Vilas Trust of $8,647,928. Excuse me. The committee then moved to consider two excellent new programs, both of which we very enthusiastically approved. The first was the Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts for teachers at UW-Parkside, and this is a very innovative teacher preparation program that responds to national concerns that teachers are not well prepared in their major content areas. In addition to providing graduates with a solid liberal arts education, this program emphasizes preparation in science and math, which we know are areas in which so many teachers lack both requisite skills and also confidence. The program includes solid representation of people of color among its students, faculty, and governing body. It also identifies itself as part of a long-term solution to reducing the achievement gap by better educating students in the early years in particular subject areas like science and math. The research is absolutely clear that better prepared teachers will indeed have this impact. We then approved another equally impressive program, the PhD in Social Work at UW-Milwaukee. The committee had nothing but accolades for this program, which addresses a statewide and national shortage of doctoral trained social workers. Social work programs are growing across the country, and they all need faculty with doctorates. This program builds on existing research strengths and faculty expertise in the areas of addictions and behavioral health, applied gerontology, and family and child welfare. And these are certainly three areas that closely align with the City of Milwaukee's needs and have a direct impact on the educational success of children. The committee appreciated this program as a demonstration of UW-Milwaukee's desire to grow its research capacity while fulfilling its urban mission. The committee quickly approved then a 4-year extension to the UW-Milwaukee's contract with the YMCA Youth Leadership Academy Charter School. And the other note on the charter schools is a brief addendum to last month's discussion on the new charter, the Academy of Milwaukee, which the board ultimately chose to table. That school is undergoing a thorough reevaluation by the Office of Charter Schools, motivated by the questions that were indeed raised by Regent Randall at our last meeting. So that school will return for our consideration sometime next year. It will not open this year. Our last order of business was, in fact, the presentation to Regent Axtell by Cora Merritt and Sharon Willem of a lifetime subscription to the UW Accountability Report. Some good bedside reading. You can just imagine his delight. So, with your permission, I offer the following resolutions approved yesterday by the Education Committee as consent agenda items for action. Resolution 1C1, approving the amended request to the Vilas Trust for 0607. Resolution 11C2, accepting the proffer from the Vilas Trust. Resolution 11D1, authorizing the Bachelor of Arts and Liberal Arts for teachers at Parkside. Resolution 11D2, authorizing the PhD in Social Work at UW-Milwaukee. And Resolution 11E, authorizing a 4-year contract extension for the YMCA Young Leaders Academy.
We have a second. It's been moved. Is there a request to move any item from the consent agenda? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Judy, I'm sorry.
I just would like to make a comment about the issue of the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and the issues that were covered in Libby's report. I'm very grateful that this was heard at this meeting by the committee, because even though I don't want to be have the Board of Regents intruding in a process that legitimately belongs elsewhere, this did raise issues that we needed to be able to answer as a Board of Regents and each of us individually. And I'm very glad for that report. Thank you very much.
To that end, is there any questions or discussions to Libby on any of these issues? That one was not a motion before us, so if anyone has any questions. Thank you, Regent Crane. At this time, I'd call on Regent South.
I wanted to note that it is a Cinco de Mayo, and Mexicans, Latin Americans, and all third world countries celebrate today the beginning of the end of European colonization of Mexico and Latin America by the defeat of the French in Puebla in 1862.
Thank you.
And I'll begin my report with that note, and I wanted to bring out my friend that some of you have already met, but I thought that perhaps new board members might be interested in her, because she was just delighted yesterday when we joined the Business and Finance Committee in the beautiful facilities that they have upstairs in discussing the issue of segregated fees. So, in solidarity with this little feature, I'll make other references a little bit later on. The Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee convened, and the minutes of the April committee meeting were approved, Mr. President. The following resolutions were unanimously approved by the Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee and now are presented as consent agenda items. And Regent Bradley, if you can restrain President Walsh, because the first item that we're going to be discussing is an easement. And I've been forewarned that I shouldn't bring this minor matters before the full board, but in fact, the rules and regulations say that these easements, if they are proposed on our behalf, then we need not bring them before you. But in this particular case, Resolution 13B is actually an easement requested by UW Extension, and it provides for an easement to AT&T Telecommunications Cabinet. And I just wanted to make that note. We stand no gain from it other than just being good neighbors. So we hope that you will consider this resolution. Resolution 13C requests the authority to adjust the project scope and budget of the UW-Madison Health Emotions Research Institute addition project. And if you recall, it was only several months ago, in February, I believe, that we authorized the original Health Emotion Research Institute project, and we're now requesting an addition to that project. And I think it was our authorization of the original project that provided the impetus for, if you can see in the narrative, in the justification of the project, these 4 or 5 related projects, including one from the Meriter Hospital and others, joining together and consolidating their initiatives, and now enhancing the original $7 million to a $10 million, all in gifts of funds. And we heard from the representatives from this project, and we're just delighted that even before the project has gotten off the ground, it's already been expanded by $3 million additional dollars of funds. Resolution 13D. This is an addition or an expansion of our university research project here at UW-Madison. Some of you might recall, you certainly would, Regent Axtell, that we authorized the expansion of the original research park in 2001 by authorizing the purchase of 113 acres. If you look at the map in your narrative, you'll see that this 9 acres, and it's 9 acres .358. And Mr. President, I think if you take your new SUV over there and do a couple of wheelies, that 358 thousandths of an acre may pop up, just kicked over to the adjacent property, and we'll call it even at 9 acres. But this 9 acres...
Regent Salas, I sold him the property.
If you'll notice in the map that this is at a junction, and of course it will provide by us purchasing this additional 9 acres and clumps of land. We would have then a more enhanced entrance to the south end of that research project. It was really great to see Mark. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, and it was just wonderful. We hope to have him there when we go before the State Building Commission to advance this project. 13E is if you recall, this is the University Square project. It's a very complicated project. It is a partnership between UW-Madison and the Madison Real Estate Properties, and that partnership has selected Executive Management Incorporated as their developer. And as we noted when we first came up before you on this particular project, there will be at least four units, four condominium units developed. The one that pertains to the university, that one that deals with the retail park, the one will deal with private housing, and another with parking. None of that has changed. The amounts of money that you see there are the same ones that you authorized, and when we came before the State Building Commission, they have also concurred. The only minor changes are changes in the agreements as such, and there are two, as noted in the report. One, to allow the language to permit purchase of the university unit prior to the commencement of the construction, and two, to amend the right of first offer to prevent any possible delays in the project. Resolution 13F, this is a parking ramp project at the University of Wisconsin at Oshkosh. This particular project had been enumerated back in August 2004, and we now present this project to you to meet the very large deficit in the parking spaces with the minor adjustments noted. And the last resolution, and in honor of my dear friend, Chancellor Leidecker, this is the Dairy Science Teacher Center project at the University of Wisconsin in River Falls. And a number of times I kidded about the fact that we wanted to move the cows from downtown River Falls up into the rural area. But look how long it's taken us to do that. If you look at the history of the previous actions undertaken for these poor animals, we started back in 1996. Now, there was a very crucial period of time in December of 2004 when the State Building Commission wanted us to reduce the scope of the project, and they were proposing this ridiculous reduction by suggesting that perhaps a lower quality of materials be used. And I recall reading about it in the newspaper and calling David Miller and says, please do not compromise the project by adopting those recommendations from that particular legislator. And they didn't. The staff worked hundreds of hours to be able to reduce the project, and we hope that we would honor our beloved Chancellor by advancing this project, and that my bovine friend can go home. This is the one that I got, as you recall, from the University of Wisconsin at Stout, and that wonderful treatment that we received there, and a wonderful reception that we're looking forward to receiving from you, Chancellor Santiago, for the Fiscal Planning Committee at the next month meeting. That concludes my report, President Awad. And now I ask for these items, Resolution 13B, C, D, E, F, and G, be adopted as by...
Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? I don't see any, but I do want to say mention two things. Number one, with regards to the Health and Motions motion, that the co-founder of that is Richie Davidson, and I think it's kind of unique that he would be honored by Time Magazine. At the same time, we're making additional commitment to him. The second thing is there's no truth to the rumor that you were going to have your meeting in the garage.
No.
But it may be true.
After
lack of respect here. Is there any discussion on any of these items? I see none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Finally, Mr. President, as you will notice, I note that at the State Building Commission, the recommendation of all of our projects that we proposed at the last meeting were accepted, included the Institute for Discovery. I'm very happy about that.
That's terrific. That's terrific. I would now call on Regent Pruitt, but with the understanding that you may be interrupted by somebody who's important.
Would not be the first time, Mr.
Yes.
President, that has happened. The Business, Finance, and Audit Committee met in joint session with the Education Committee. We met in joint session with all committees this month to hear a presentation on the second annual report of the UW School of Medicine and Public Health, the Wisconsin Partnership Fund for a Healthy Future. UW-Madison Medical School Dean Philip Farrell reported that this is the second annual report on the use of funds received from the conversion of Blue Cross and Blue Shield United of Wisconsin to a for-profit stock corporation. He described the activities leading to the award of grants by the Oversight and Advisory Committee, OAC, and by the Medical Education and Research Committee, MERC, for health improvement projects, along with brief descriptions of projects awarded funding. Total funding of $18.8 million was awarded. The OAC, which was allocated 35% of the funding for public health initiatives, awarded a total of $5.5 million. The funded projects represent initiatives that address many issues identified in the State Health Plan, Healthiest Wisconsin 2010, and they show considerable and I think very encouraging success in meeting minority population needs and are aligned closely with the goals of the 5-year plan. The MERC, which was allocated 65% of the funding, made awards totaling $13.3 million. For 2/3 of the funding, emphasis was placed on funding 5 focus areas in education and research. The remaining 1/3 went to strategic initiatives, including expansion of the Masters of Public Health, the Wisconsin Academy for Rural Medicine, reducing cancer disparity, transformation of healthcare conference, health innovations programs, and a new investigator program. The resolution approving this annual report will be presented with the other consent resolutions. After the joint session, the committee reconvened and first heard from UW Oshkosh Chancellor Richard Wells, never at a loss for words, as noted earlier, who presented the Oshkosh component of the UW system growth agenda. The institution aims to increase the number of graduates through increased enrollment, increased degree offerings, and retention, and increased number of students of color and adult students. Increased faculty would be needed. Their goal is to add 400 students per biennium over the next 3 bienniums. We then had a brief follow-up discussion with Associate Vice President Frida Harris on the biennial budget initiatives for 2007-2009, and she answered a series of follow-up questions that the committee had. We then moved on to our quarterly status update on audits, which obviously included the audit on student segregated fees. Ron Yates gave us an update on the other major projects that the Office of Operations Review and Audit is involved in. Projects underway include the review of tuition waivers and academic fees. Initial information has been received from the Legislative Audit Bureau on the Economic Development Review. We were then joined by our grumpy colleagues from the Physical Planning and Funding Committee, led by the chair of that committee, with his thing that he got at UW Scout some time ago. We welcome them to our palatial meeting site, and they joined us obviously because the issue of segregated fees is not just an issue of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, but obviously of the whole board, and of special interest and importance to the Physical Planning and Funding Committee. Mr. Yates presented the findings and recommendations from the review of student segregated fees. Fee setting and collection processes were found to be appropriate and in compliance with UW system and Board of Regents policies, and students are fairly informed and participate significantly in the process. However, some inconsistencies were noted, and several recommendations for improvements were offered. Among the recommendations the report suggests include involving students in the early stages of budget development, customizing and standardizing budget materials, and including additional details when submitting proposed segregated fee rates and fee-funded capital projects. There was a good deal of healthy discussion about the recommendations. It was agreed that the issue would come back before the committee at the June meeting with a scope statement for a system-wide committee to develop options for this board to consider with respect to each of the recommendations included. And obviously it is our intention to involve Regent Solis and the Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee in that process, as well as as any other members of this board who would like to be involved in any way, shape, or form, as well as obviously a much broader group within the University of Wisconsin system community. The committee then approved Auditor Yates' proposed scope for a review of academic performance standards in coaches' contracts. That review was requested by Regent Randall at the March committee meeting. We then moved on to a review of chancellors and president's car allowances. Vice President Debbie Durkin reviewed a number of alternatives to the current $700 per month car allowance for UW chancellors and assistant president. She indicated the president has recommended eliminating the current allowance system and replacing it with a vehicle leasing contract through the Department of Administration. This resolution will also be presented with the other consent resolutions. Associate Vice President Harris then presented us information regarding the state-mandated reductions in the number of administrative positions by institution, staff type, and title. The report is required to be submitted to DOA as part of the 2005-2007 biennial budget. This resolution will also be presented with the other consent resolutions. On the very good news front, Associate Vice President Al Chris reported that the 2005-2007 biennial budget provided for a 2% pay plan effective July 1, 2005 for the 2005-2006 fiscal year. This is the pay plan for university academic leadership. The resolution before you authorizes the UW system president to distribute the pay plan now that it has been released by the Joint Committee on Employment Relations. It was originally expected to be distributed in July 1, 2005, and it has now been released. This resolution is also part of your consent resolution set. Finally, we heard from the Vice President, who reported some additional good news. The Joint Committee on Employment Relations.
Regent Freud, the Governor's here. I know. Come on in. I want everyone to note that the applause for the governor wasn't as large as Regent Axtell. It's my pleasure to welcome the governor to our meeting, and in doing so, I would like to set the table a bit. This is the third time Governor Doyle has graced us with his presence, and that's very important because historically governors haven't come to this meeting. And what is important is it's part of the communications we have with the governor's office, the executive branch. And we should all remember that 4 years ago, we all kind of shared the pain with a $3.2 billion deficit. And we were fortunate that 2 years later, Governor Doyle saw fit to reinvest in the University of Wisconsin. And although we never get everything we ask for through creative vetoes, we were able to solve some problems in access and financial aid, and we wouldn't have had that but for his commitment to us. And finally, I think you'll hear from him today, and we've heard for the last year and a half that he understands that we are part of the solution. We're part of the economic solution of this state, and we're part of we have a great impact, and how important education is to all the citizens of the state. And he is committed to do something about that. And so I welcome you, Governor Doyle, and please talk.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you all for allowing me to spend some time with you this morning. A couple things I want to make sure that I remark on is I want to thank Roger for his incredible service to this board and to the university, and I think most importantly to the students who have gotten a great education in the University of Wisconsin system during his tenure as a regent. You all know, and what I know about just what a remarkable man Roger is, what a bridge builder he is, how he has helped bring people together, and what his focus has always been is just to maintain this wonderful and improve this wonderful university. So, Roger, I really want to thank you for your service. I also want to welcome Mary and Jeff, and I think you will find that there are two very remarkable people that are joining this board, and who will be very much part of where the board will be headed. Hard workers, smart, and I just am really pleased that I've had the chance to appoint Jeff, and that the technical college has seen fit to have Mary come, and I thank you for your service. I also really want to give you thanks because you have stepped up, and David deserves a lot of credit here. Libby certainly deserves a lot of credit, and as well as other members of the board who have, over the last number of months, in fact it seems like years, have brought to the attention of the people of Wisconsin what would result to the university and to our educational system from these sort of draconian ideas that were being pushed. The thought that we would put into the Constitution, we would enshrine in the Constitution a measure which, I think everyone recognizes, would have serious negative effect on the university, was not a very good prospect, and we all had to work at that and make sure people understood how it would affect the educational mission of this state. The fact that the votes in the legislature were 2-1 against the various proposals, I think, demonstrates that people really understood on both sides of the aisle just how harmful it would be to what we are trying to accomplish. And I thank you for your efforts. And again, David had a couple of rousing moments in front of the legislative committees and made the case very, very well. Well, I'm here because I want to talk about the Wisconsin Covenant, and which I am just incredibly excited about, and which I think has just such enormous potential to really rally the state around the steps we should be taking to make sure that our middle school students are getting ready for high school in a way that they know that college is a realistic, achievable goal that they can reach by having successfully completed their high school studies. I see this as really part of an effort that many of us have been making. Certainly, the superintendent in her K-16 initiative and really working to make sure that we're looking at education as, I'll even say 4K-16 concept, is one that really helps to fit the pieces together of elementary leads to middle, leads to high school, and high school leads to college. And Kevin's growth agenda for the university really directed at how we increase the number of college graduates in this state is incredibly important. And I want to support it in any way I can, because it does really recognize that the future of this state and our ability to succeed in what the Friedman's flat world economy depends on us increasing the number of college graduates in our state. And so I applaud and want to support in any way we can Kevin's and this board's growth agenda, which is at the heart not only of giving our people greater, just for its own sake, greater education, which is a great goal in and of itself, but the economic benefits that come from that education are crucial to the long-term health of the state. Well, to that end, in my State of the State speech, I proposed the Wisconsin Covenant, and I have been out on the road talking a lot about it, and Jessica, who is here,
has been out as well, and she's a middle school educator, so a lot of this really, this concept really came from what she has drummed into my head over the years about how important middle school is to get ready for high school. And the covenant, I see, is really important in many ways in its simplicity and in the profound effect it can have on students of this state. It is a basic exchange of promises. And the promise that I would like to ask of that any 8th grader who wants to step up to make that promise at the conclusion of 8th grade, the promise they will make is that they will go and finish high school, that they will take the set of courses that are necessary to gain admission to college, that they'll maintain a B average, and that they'll stay out of trouble. And at least in my dealings with 8th graders, at least when our kids were that age, those are those kind of basic, concrete things that an 8th grader understands. Go to high school, finish high school, take the courses needed to be admitted to college, and maintain a B average. And in exchange, I want the university, the state of Wisconsin, to make a promise to those students, which is that if you do that, there will be a place in our university system for you, and that we will work with each one of your families individually to assure that we put together the financial package that assures that you can afford that education. Now, I hear a lot of great comments from 8th grade teachers about this, because they see 8th grade can really be a discussion about, throughout 8th grade, about the covenant and the promise that people will be asked to sign at the end. I would like to have the university fully engaged, as you are already. A lot of this is to try to really bring focus to a lot of efforts that are already going on. But to be in those 8th grade classes, UW Green Bay, Chancellor Shepard, you and your wife have just been real leaders in this effort, and much of what we're doing here is modeled after what has been done in Green Bay. But to get into those schools from the university, to give those 8th graders, and hopefully even, you don't have to limit it to 8th graders, but certainly those 8th graders knowing what college is about and what's going to be expected of them. But also having them understand how important getting prepared for high school is for college. And again, I've heard this often from the middle school educator in my family about how 8th grade is really the year to make sure that the kids have sharpened their study skills and habits and prepared themselves for what's going to come at them in high school. So I've heard a lot of great things from 8th grade educators. I've heard a lot of great things from high school teachers, because those covenant scholars are going to be people who in high school they can continually remind what they have signed, the promise that they have signed, and what's ahead of them. And I have heard great things from parents, because you know, you all have been involved in higher education, and we know that there are a lot of kids who come from families that have 2, 3, 4, 5 generations of college education. They've been talking about college since they started talking. But for a lot of our kids, smart kids, hard-working kids, college seems like something that's out there for somebody else. The college is for, you know, I can't get there. That's for rich people. That's not for me. And that's what I see the Wisconsin Covenant addressing, is saying to those kids, college is there for you. College is there for you. And it's not just some winning the lottery that gets you there. It is doing these 3 or 4 or 5 basic things in high school will assure that you get to college. I know you all have attended graduation ceremonies, and all of the parents are crying. But I'll tell you, the ones that are crying the hardest are those that don't have college educations themselves and are seeing their children become the first generation of their family to graduate from college. And I bet there are a number of you in this room who fit that description. That is the proudest moment of that parent's life, their whole life. I will guarantee at the end of their life, when they say, what is your proudest achievement, it will be that their child or their children got a college education. And to me, what the Wisconsin Covenant is a covenant not only with those children, but with those parents and with those families, saying that we're going to back you up and we're going to support you, and we're going to do this. Now, we know it's going to take additional resources, and
we know a lot of this, in some ways what we're doing is simply confirming what's already true. And we're making it clear to people. Basically, I mean, if you get a B average in our high schools and you take a college preparatory course, you could be pretty sure right now you're going to a campus at the University of Wisconsin. But we're making sure that that's clear. But we also know, and Kevin, again, I want to congratulate and thank, because he has really focused on this, as have a number of chancellors, the national trend of those kids in the lower quintiles, and I even start using this word quintile now. You know, I don't know why the rest of the world works in quartiles, but but we know that those students in those two lower quintiles are going to college in smaller percentages than they did 20 years ago. It's not acceptable. It just isn't fair, number one, and we're leaving too much talent to the side when we're not making sure that those kids are coming through. So your efforts and we will work closely with you to make sure that the financial aid is structured in ways that is really directed at making sure that those kids in the, when you say lower two quintiles, by the way, you're moving into middle-class families, and that those families that we are structuring in a way that is making sure that those families can afford college education for their children. I am proud that in the last two budgets, despite some pretty draconian cuts by the legislature that I was able to veto back in, that we will have doubled in this 4 years the state commitment to financial assistance. And we're going to continue that trend. And I would urge any of you who have a voice in Washington that it would be nice if the federal government was on the same path, the same trajectory we were on in increasing financial aid, instead of the flat line or even slight decrease that they have been imposing in recent years. I also see this as a chance to really rally the whole state. What I propose that we do is that we will set up a parallel private not-for-profit that can raise private money. I have a lot of businesses, I know Kevin and the chancellors do, that come and ask, how can I help get these kids to college? And this is a way that they know that if they put their money there, it will go exactly for what they want it to go for, which is helping younger people be able to afford a college education. They won't have to worry about it sort of going off into wherever. They will know that that is where the money is going for. And even beyond that, I hope that those people will contribute with more than their money, and that as part of the Wisconsin Covenant, that they will intensify already great efforts that are going on in this state, that will intensify them in mentoring them, in adopting an 8th grade in their community, in doing what they need to do to work with those kids from 8th grade through high school to help them be able to get to college. I think this is our opportunity to really, as a state, declare that among our very, very highest priorities is to increase the number of college graduates, and that one of the ways to do it is to make sure that kids who have met their promise to us, no matter what their economic background, have college ahead of them. So I thank you very much for your consideration, and I thank as well many of you who I have talked to about this and helped to draw from, and the superintendent, again, has been so involved in so many of these programs dealing with helping get elementary and middle school and high school kids through and into college. There are a lot of great things going on in this state. And I think anybody who's looking at it has to say that we really need to intensify those efforts, we really need to focus those efforts, and we really need to expand them beyond the sort of educational community into the broad community of Wisconsin to say this is what we want to accomplish. It is at the very heart of the most basic values we have in this state, that if a student shows up in our schools, some of them facing enormous challenges, works really hard, struggles away, gets this done, that it's just basic fairness and one of our most basic values that we say to that student, come into our university. I want to also conclude by saying I've had great response to this from the technical colleges and from the private universities and colleges, each of which want to be part of it, and both of which I want, and with you, to make sure that we bring this in. As I say, as a state and as a university, we can't promise admission to a private university. I often get asked by high school kids, can I go to a school in another state? I say, well, I can't make any promises about what we can do with Texas or California or something. But here in Wisconsin, we have great private colleges and universities that are willing to be part of it, and we're are already beginning and will continue to talk to them about how we do it. And obviously, the technical colleges are an important component of this. I mean, to me, again, if a child has met the Wisconsin Covenant, a student, and then says, I really want to become an electrician, we can hardly say, you did so well, we won't let you do that. We're going to make you go to the four-year campus. So we clearly have to bring the technical colleges into this as well, and we will. But with our great university system, our great private and independent colleges and universities we have in the state, our great technical college system, we have the resources here to fulfill this promise to every single student in this state who keeps up their end of the bargain. So thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk about this. I'm really excited about it. I really, really want to have this next class. I've already been talking to 7th graders that when they enter 8th grade next year, and that first day of 8th grade, I would love to have every 8th grade teacher in the schools of this state saying, you are the first 8th grade class who at the end of this year is going to be asked to sign this covenant. So I thank you again very much for giving me a chance to talk.
I want to first apologize for not introducing Jessica because she's very much a part of this, and not just her commitment throughout her adult life, but also as the person who's really in charge of the household. I'd like to take some questions to the governor at this time. Yes, Ben.
I want to thank you for including bringing my technical college forecast. Say thank you for including the technical colleges in that. That's very important. We're looking forward to working on that with you as well. Let me ask you about going back to the growth agenda, and Kevin, and one of the questions I ran into at the Senate confirmation hearing. I don't think got to a vote yet on the Senate with me, but on our regent nominations.
The only thing they ever take up is to reject somebody they don't like. So I apologize on their behalf for those of you who have been waiting for so long for a confirmation. But
thank you. No, I talked about the growth agenda at that Senate confirmation hearing, and one of the responses was, well, we ought to concentrate more on brain drain, reducing brain drain, and attracting people from other states as opposed to having more people graduate from our colleges, our universities. I disagree with that, and I just wanted to get your take on it.
Well, I mean, the best way to have more college I just believe in sort of basics here. The way to get more college graduates in the state is to have more college graduates graduate in the state, and that's what we can control. I mean, it's also true as part of the growth agenda, which is, part of the broader Grow Wisconsin efforts to try to make sure that we've upgraded the economy of this state, that is going to be one of the great draws of people. I mean, we need both a strong, booming economy, and we need universities that are graduating more people. I think you've got to work at both parts of that. I also, I will just say that on the so-called brain drain question, the University of Wisconsin system is the greatest attractor to this state of highly talented people, some of whom come here and never leave. And I look around the room, I see a few who, came here to go to college and loved Wisconsin, or maybe kind of liked it and found a job here, or got married to somebody from here. But there's a lot of people that came here from other places, and so the university is, in fact, probably our single greatest draw of people. I'll also say, people who come here from other parts of the country, or even who come here from Wisconsin and then go to other parts of the country, but who continue to have their heart at the University of Wisconsin are tremendously valuable to this institution. We should never forget that. I mean, I want to extend my deepest thanks to John and Tasha Morgridge, who made an incredible charitable gift. Now, they don't live in Wisconsin, but their commitment to this university, having graduated from here, has students for generations will benefit from. So there's a lot to all of this, and people who come here at the university, as I say, is one of our greatest draws, but it's also one of the greatest sources of friends that we have all around the world, are people who pass through this university and who now have an allegiance to it and who have supported it financially in ways. I mean, what were we, #1 in grants last year? 1 or 2? I mean, that's an incredible statement about who the people are who graduate from the University of Wisconsin.
Tom.
Well, Governor, thank you for endorsing the growth agenda. It'll be quite a change to talk about growing enrollment in the university, and that we're intent in giving you a package that's something that you can be out there pushing and part of your program for the next budget. I spent half a day Tuesday and half a day Wednesday at the research park, both times with the stem cell people, just to get a handle on all that was going on. I mean, it was amazing. YSL has grown, I think, to almost 50 employees in 2 years. And talk about brain gain, right? Think of finding those specialized people in that short period of time. Along with the gift, along with WRF's contribution of $50 million in the States, could you talk a little more about how you see the future of that unique industry that Wisconsin has? I mean, we are the National Stem Cell Bank.
This is an opportunity that comes along for a state probably once every couple of generations, if that. We, thanks to, and later today we're going to honor former Chancellor Shane. I mean, it is the result of a lot of people who built an incredible research institution over many years. But that came to fruition, that really came to national prominence, obviously, with the stem cell breakthroughs that occurred here. And we have right now in Wisconsin the most advanced and best qualified team of stem cell researchers anywhere in the world. The opportunity that gives us is, first, let's put the economics of it aside. To think we're at the forefront of curing diseases that people long thought to be incurable is something we should just take incredible pride in. And I meet people all over the country, people who really understand, parents with children with juvenile diabetes, and people who have been deeply involved in this. And you say where you're the governor from, and they know immediately where their hope is right now. Other states are desperately trying to catch up with us. I was recently out in California and talking to a number of people who are involved in the stem cell initiative there, and tell them, we want you to start spending that $3 billion, because a fair amount of it is coming back here in licensing fees, so get out there and get going. But they certainly know and support Wisconsin's efforts, because they know how central it is to stem cell research. The economic side of it, if you spent those 2 days at the research park, is our opportunity here is to build a major part of our economy around biotechnology and biosciences. The experts tell me, and some of them are here, Kevin, Chancellor Wiley and others, of course, talk about it with me a lot, is that how we practice medicine in the next 10 or 15 years is going to be revolutionized. And Wisconsin is in the position to be at the very center of that. I laid out a challenge to this state that it is predicted that in the next 10 years, the stem cell industry, private industry, will be over $100 billion. And my challenge to the state is, let's make sure that we capture 10% of that. Now, I'm for strong stem cell happening everywhere in the country. and in the world. And just as huge breakthroughs at Madison have led to breakthroughs in other parts of the country and world, so those researchers in other parts of the world are going to make breakthroughs that are going to lead to great things here in Wisconsin. And we, through WARF, have a mechanism of technology transfer that we actually have people coming from all over the world trying to figure out how they figured this out decades and decades ago, because we have a unique arrangement. I don't need to tell you that there's a major threat to this, that as I think everybody in this room knows, I actually had to veto a bill that would have stopped the advance of stem cell research in this state. And if you want to see this great scientific team pick up and go someplace else, keep pushing those bills. Because, I mean, at some point somebody says, why do I have to put up with it? Even though they love the University of Wisconsin, they love the research facility here, they love the investment that we've made, they love the kind of interdisciplinary research that goes on, they love the future here, the institutes for discovery on top of the medical research facilities that have been built. They love all of that. So we have the opportunity to maintain the strongest research team in the world and to be able to convert much of that into good jobs here in Wisconsin. We have been named as one of the 5 hottest spots in the world for biotechnology development. We recently were put on the honor roll of only 7 states in the country. We've never been recognized before in economic development. We've been put on one of only 7 states that got A's and we're on the honor roll. And a fair amount of the comment about that was because of the developing biotechnology and biosciences industries that are emerging here. This is crucial. And it isn't only in Madison, by the way. Let me say that what's important about the Institutes for Discovery is that they are going to be there to help researchers that come from other campuses around the system. The Medical College of Wisconsin is now developing into a significant stem cell research facility. We have incredible resources, and it is our challenge to make sure that we aggressively move forward and keep our leadership in this area. Thank you.
Regent Salas. Yes, Governor, I wanted to thank you for restoring the financial aid that the Joint Finance Committee so heartlessly cut. But as you recall, we weren't able to restore all of the amount, and we're going to be coming back to you for additional resources to financial aid so that children from families in the lowest 2 quintiles who are qualified to come here and can't afford it can come here. So we look forward to you continue to champion further increases to defray some of the increases in tuition that we've raised.
Well, I look forward to it. As you know, I've had 2 budgets. The first one, I'm dealing with the worst deficit in the history of the state. The second one, we were a lot better off then, and we were able to make some major turnarounds, including increasing financial aid. And thanks to the cuts that we've made in other areas, and thanks to the economic growth we've seen in this state over the last couple of years, I'm really hopeful that when we come to the next budget, we're going to continue to increase that investment. And I really do call it investment. I recently got asked by one of the students that when we talk about the Wisconsin Covenant and said, well, is this just all going to come from taxpayers? And then I explained what a $52 billion biennial budget is, and that an additional $7 or $9 million, you know, sort of comes back to Austin Powers. You know, a million is a lot less than a billion. And so within the context of that budget, it is more than reasonable to, I believe, each of these budgets continue to expand financial aid. But the other thing is, the point I tried to make to this student is that this is an investment. And as we have more people with college educations, we have higher salaries, we have more tax revenue, and I believe, you know, to me that investment will pay itself off many, many times over the years.
And if I may, excuse me, Regent President, also thank you, Governor Doyle, for your support in some of the capital projects that we have advanced. As you know, how difficult it's been dealing with some of the members of the State Building Commission, and your presence and your championing our providing additional classrooms, the Institute for Discovery. I mean, there's just a number of capital projects that I could cite. If it hadn't been for your support, we would have never gotten through that commission. So again, thank you for your support of those projects. Thank you.
I just wanted to, Governor Doyle, wanted to make a comment about the covenant and how much many of us believe in this. And to also indicate that one of the things I don't think we've articulated well enough so far about how we promote this, both in selling it and ultimately then making it a reality that works, is that this is not just a matter of telling 8th graders that they have this opportunity, but indicating to parents from birth that your child does have a future in this state, and that we as a community will see that your child gets the education that he or she deserves and wants, given their interests and their talent. And I think that that will help families to believe in a future for their children, and it will make a great difference as to whether or not the 8th grader already believes that.
Right. That's true. Great.
I have a comment and then a question. First of all, Governor, I want to thank you for what I would describe as your courage on the stem cell issues. It takes courage to do what you've done, and we need that, and we're going to need it more in the future. Secondly, the covenant and a lot of your plans, to me, are a way of saying that you understand that this state has to be affordable to the people, and you're addressing that in the covenant. You're saying to everyone, all right, we all know you have a college education. It's important. I'm going to make it affordable. That's what Jim Doyle's going to do, and I want to thank you for that. So, but then my question is, what are the challenges to do that? Why aren't people listening, and why aren't they responding to your identification of this affordability issue?
Well, I think people really are listening. It's sometimes hard to get that listening converted into political action. So I think it's something we have to really keep talking about. One is, I think we have to make sure we keep the covenant pretty simple. You know, I love the University of Wisconsin, and I say this with all due respect, Kevin, but sometimes when things come over, they can get amazingly complex when all these smart people really start analyzing it from 1,000 different directions. So I think part of this, both in the message that we bring to the people of Wisconsin and the message to the 8th graders, is let's keep this pretty simple. Go to high school, take a college course, get a B average, stay out of trouble. Let's not, you know, there are a lot of other questions like, what does stay out of trouble mean? And so on. And, you know, my view of that is I think we should ask, and, you know, we'll get down to these details, but I think we should simply ask the high school principal or a guidance counselor who's ever appropriate at the end of the high school term to sign a certificate saying this person's been a good citizen, and we shouldn't get into tiny little, did you get a speeding ticket or this or that. I think you give it to the principals and you say, was this sort of what the law school does for admission to the bar. The dean of the law school signs that this is a person of good character. No, not you. But well, David had to take a bar exam to get it. My real request here is that while I realize that there are a lot of technical things that are going to have to get worked out, and we're going to work very closely with you to get it done, let's make sure that the covenant itself, as it is out there, is really clear and simple and understandable. And I think that will help the public in general understand this. If they understand that there's a lot of very difficult regulations of here and there to go, it's going to not be quite as simple as the message that you just delivered, which is we're going to help college be more affordable for hardworking families that are really feeling squeezed right now. And then I think we just have to keep talking about it, because I don't find, I guess I've heard one or two people oppose it, but I would guess they're pretty hard to find people who are going to oppose the idea that a kid who's really worked hard and earned their way into our university system isn't going to be able to, is going to be able to go, and we're going to help them afford it.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Governor, I applaud you on the Wisconsin Covenant. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think this board is going to support it. Can you give us some advice? We've had known that the university has taken some hits in recent past, and the legislature is critical of virtually everything that we do. What can we do to improve the relationship with the legislature and improve the legislature's regard for the University of Wisconsin?
Well, I think, and I have said this a number of times, that here are really the people that are going to do that for you. You know, that the chancellors of the campuses, it's easy for a legislator to be there and kind of like call the university a bunch of, I don't know, whatever names they call. It's a lot different thing to be in Stevens Point or Oshkosh or Milwaukee and to go after the campus that, you know, I think people really on a local level understand how incredibly important these campuses are to the state. So one of the things I would suggest is that we, and I know it's already going on, but you do it even more so, is that the chancellors really are the ones, and you know, every place I go in this state, and I've visited all the campus and had a chance to meet with the communities deeply respect the leadership of these campuses, and I really think it's important to make sure that they're the ones out there talking. Legislators shouldn't, you know, and I don't want to lump them because there are a lot of different variations of those, but those that just routinely beat up on the university and look for a chance that every time Kevin turns the wrong direction, believe me, I know about being excessively looked at, but you know, everything. Yeah. You know, I don't know that you're going to do much about those people, that they're just flat out anti-education. But for the people that, you know, take a shot here or there, I just really would urge you to continue and enhance and really put the chancellors out front, because these are the people that really represent this university in the communities across the state. And I just can't tell you how highly regarded this system is. And occasionally I've met with the chancellors. I have to kind of pep them up a little bit because, you know, they've heard one criticism after another, and I have to tell them, which is true, that that people love this system. And there will be a personnel issue from time to time that the university doesn't handle as well as it should have been handled, and there will be I guarantee you there's going to be another computer issue that's going to come along. That, I mean, any operation this size is going to have those things happen. But I believe the more we focus on the instructional mission and the research mission of this great institution and all of its campuses, and the more we just stay focused on those basic things, the more the public will support it. I really do believe, I think you saw that this 2-1 defeat of Tabor 18 or whatever it was really largely the result of people understanding that it would have a devastating effect on the quality of higher education, that it would make it extremely more expensive, that it would drive tuitions. If you can't raise state revenue for the university, then there's only one place to go. People understood that, I think, in the end, and that's why you saw this be defeated so overwhelmingly.
Any other questions? Oh, Rick, Chancellor Wells.
I was surprised. Sorry, Governor. I would like to really thank you for the leadership on the Wisconsin Covenant. I was in the state of Indiana for 7 years, the 21st Century Scholars Program, and a number of us have gone down there to get some advice from them. That's a 16-year-old program that's very similar to what you're talking about. And I agree with the keeping the message simple, and I'm really pleased to hear that this is being expanded to the technical colleges and figuring out for the privates. And in that spirit, one of the things that we learned in Indiana, the most important thing is the core curriculum. It's a college prep curriculum. So I'd like us to think a little bit about the B average. The grades vary from how they're given from one campus or one school to another, and it's really having a good solid curriculum so that some of those students that get through and they pass the college preparatory curriculum that would have access into the technical colleges or our wonderful UW two-year colleges. So just that one piece I think we want to think a little bit about before we get too committed to that. But thank you very much for pushing it.
Well, in Indiana really is the state. We looked at two states pretty carefully, North Carolina and Indiana. And Indiana really, because of the sort of universal application, is what we have modeled a lot of it after. We'll talk about the B average. I like the B average because I think people know what it means, but I don't think B average has to mean that it's a 3.0 average. I think we've got to make sure that there's some, a B average in some ways is in the eye of the beholder, and we've got to make sure that we, I think the message, my view of this, but I'd certainly be glad to talk and hear from others that we should talk about a B average, but is a B a 2.67 or is a B 3. I think that it's something that we should be able to work with. Do you wait later years, maybe a little heavier than others, so show somebody who's made some improvement gets some? I think there are things that we can do.
Well, Governor, thank you very much, and I always get the last word on this board, and my last word is that I'm pleased that you feel so strong about the importance of our star faculty, our academic staff, and leadership. And as our parents said, Governor, you get what you pay for.
Well, and by the way, speaking of paying for it, this afternoon I will be signing the 221, but also an additional 1.25 for the faculty and staff. So I'm really pleased, and I've made some comments about the legislature, but I want to acknowledge and thank the fact that when we came into this much more difficult, we came out of that terrible budget. This year, we were able to put aside a significant amount of money to provide raises for people who deserve them and haven't had them for a while. And in fact, not even this afternoon. I think, Jim, the next half hour, I'm going to be signing the provision so that people will be getting a little bit more in their pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Bye-bye.
All right. Oh, I asked him. Of course, you know what he wanted. I'm no, we won't do that. Oh, see, you passed up the marathon.
That's easier than yeah. I think that's true. That's true. I'm going to follow that.
Yeah, I haven't.
Oh, really?
Thank you, Regent Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You mean he's not done yet?
My report, I believe, is shorter than the report of the Fiscal and Funding Committee, particularly about all the editorial comments that are always offered in that report. Governor just talked about the 1.25% pay plan, so not only did he interrupt me, he scooped me on my report, which I'm delighted about. We then heard from Vice President, I'm just going to jump right back into this. We then heard from Vice President Durkin, who noted that Senior Executive Vice President Mash, General Counsel Brady, and Audit Director Yates represented the university at Tuesday's hearing of the Assembly, Colleges, and University Committee, where they discussed the status of the UW's payroll software system, among other issues. Senior Executive Vice President Mash provided additional information to the committee on the university's implementation of that system, which I think we would all agree has been challenging and somewhat difficult. Ms. Durkin also stated that the most current projections on utilities show a slight surplus in our utility appropriation. Hopefully we'll be able to apply any savings in our shortfall to the veterans remissions issue that we talked about, I think, last month. Regent Loftus expressed concern over the potential negative impact on UW-Madison of any constitutional amendment to limit either revenues or expenses. As we've learned today, that at least for the short term, while the concern remains, I know on the part of Regent Loftus, at least we will not have a constitutional amendment to limit revenues and expenses for the time being. He asked General Counsel Brady to prepare a preliminary briefing memo on giving UW-Madison more autonomy in setting tuition, determining faculty salaries, and other things the board might be able to do within its statutory authority. So, the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee unanimously approved the following resolutions, which I now present as consent items. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move the adoption of Resolution 1.2A, the Wisconsin Partnership Fund for Healthy Future, UW School of Medicine and Public Health, and the Oversight and Advisory Committee 2005 Annual Report. Resolution 1.2F, a review of Chancellor's and President's car allowance. Resolution 1.2G1, the 2005-2007 Administrative Position Reduction Report. And Resolution 1.2G3, the authorization to distribute the delayed 2005-2006 pay plan to university academic leadership contingent upon release of funds by Joint Committee on Employment Relations.
Is there a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any request to remove any items from the consent agenda? Regent Love.
Not to remove any, I just to have some comments on the budget. We'll do it after.
I'll just ask that question and then I'll ask for discussion. I see no requests, so we'll have discussion.
Thank you very much. This stems from our discussion on diversity, on the growth agenda, and the action last night of the legislature, where last night they passed Senate Bill 613, which is a bill to expand the veteran tuition remission to 100% starting in the fall of 2007. I'm going to make a proposal for us to ponder, and that is that based on the obvious fact that we're in a war, a shooting war in Iraq and Afghanistan, that we're going to be in that war a long time. And war produces little good, but it does produce veterans, and this country and this state has had a history of supporting these people. Chancellor Saunders should know that I lived in Vet's house at Whitewater in 1968. And I remember going to college on the GI Bill, and that at each campus, certainly at Whitewater, there was a Vets Affairs office. You go there, and there were people to help you. And when we had our presentation on the growth agenda and diversity yesterday, we put this program in a separate category. And I think that we need to embrace this program, exploit it, double its cost by doubling the enrollment of these people, integrate it into our diversity effort, integrate it into our growth agenda. Who are these people? They're African Americans, they're Hispanics, they're older students, they're people that have already been trained, educated, and they are disciplined. They are the best students that you can imagine. They are future teachers and future nurses. And what is this program? This program is a pot of money that every chancellor has to say to people that they're going to recruit, you can come here tuition free. Think of the veterans or Hispanics and African Americans and older. This is a great opportunity for the University of Wisconsin system to embrace this and integrate it into our diversity and growth agenda. And I would like us to think about that as how we may do it and how we might help these people, because you need a lot of support when you go back to school after being a veteran. I mean, it's a lot. So at some point, I would like to propose this, that we have a discussion or a paper prepared about how to integrate this into our future plan.
I'm going to have a point of order. I just have a quick vote on the consent agenda. I misunderstood, but your comments are very interesting. I'd like to follow up on them. So I'd like to move the question on the consent agenda. I'm going to deem it moved because it's consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Now, back to Tom's comments, I would just like to add something and then see if we want to go further. That's a very interesting idea that I'm reading what you're saying, being proactive and take our own initiatives in an area that is not going to, issue that's not going to go away. Full disclosure, I'm a vet myself and went to law school on it, and there are some challenges. But any further discussion on what Tom is saying, which I assume what you're saying is propose an initiative as we move forward, not necessarily action today.
No, not action today, but I would just like to get a few comments.
Let's have any other comments on this? Regent Poor?
I think it's a wonderful idea, Regional Office, and I think it, it is all about how we talk about these things. And I think we can also link it, and I think we've mentioned this on a couple different occasions over the last few months. This university system has really done a remarkable job of taking the veterans who have come in without any special appropriation, without any additional resources, finding the resources on the individual campuses to educate them. And I think we should take great pride in that, not whine about the fact that we had to do it, but actually take great pride in the fact that we did it. The same is true, buried in our consent agenda, incidentally, about the administrative position reductions, which again, I mean, is sort of this university and the campuses stepping out, making some difficult decisions by all these folks who sit behind Roger Axtell over there. And, I think that in both cases, and looking back and going forward, it's important how we talk about this, and I think Regent Loftus has offered a very important and constructive suggestion.
Any other comments? I will take it upon myself to discuss this with setting up a subcommittee to come up with some ideas and brainstorm and be back with some ideas. Thank you for the suggestion, Tom. Regent Bradley.
I just want to make a comment as we, as Regents, speak about the growth agenda. I spent time yesterday with 2 members of the Joint Finance Committee, and I think we're reacting to our agenda of yesterday and UW Oshkosh's growth agenda proposal. And I think as we talk about this, we need to use the right words. UW Oshkosh's growth agenda and any other campus growth agenda is a response to data-based studies that show there are issues in northeastern Wisconsin that are very challenging to make that part of the state grow and have opportunities for people who live there. The UW Oshkosh growth agenda is a response to the issues that were identified for that part of the state. The danger is some people hear us talk about a growth agenda as if we're sitting here thinking that we ought to grow just because we as a state agency want to get bigger. We're growing in response to the needs of the state, and any research that is done, any analysis that is done by mayors, by county executives, by a North Star Research Group that says, here are the issues in this part of the state, here's what you need to do to make this economy grow. Every one of those leads to the conclusion that you're going to need this trained workforce, and that leads to the technical college system and the University of Wisconsin system. We're asking to grow to meet needs of the state. And I just want to say we need to really be speaking clearly about that so that the legislative reaction and the public reaction is not that we're coming up with ideas to grow just because we think it would be cool to grow.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Our state has understood that in relation to the technical college system, so we have to take some of that, perhaps, language they've used and way that they've explained that to the public over the past decades, right?
Right. That's a good point. Any other comments? Are there any additional resolutions? Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials?
Just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to comment, last night I missed your company at dinner because I spoke at the retirement of Professor Don Nichols, who retired from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Economics Department after more than 40 years of teaching here. He came here after 8 years at Yale. And recruited one of the greatest economics faculty in the United States, if not the world. Trained most of Harvard's current economics faculty who started here. As Don said, he got them at their most productive. Harvard is a museum. But the most important thing about Professor Nichols is that he was indeed a public intellectual. He was what this state had as a faculty member who went out and explained to the people of the state, the legislature, and everyone else what the economy of the state was and what it meant to be in a global economy. And he's staying in Wisconsin. He's not going away, but I hope that on behalf of, I took the liberty of saying I was appearing there on behalf of all the Regents. I knew you wouldn't mind. So Don is a great person, and we recognize his retirement.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is there any unfinished or additional business? Seeing none, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Oh, excuse me. Yes, we will. We'll take a 1-minute recess because we're going to move into closed session unless anybody has any requests. I don't see any reason to take a 10-minute recess. We just need to clear the room.
Oh, yeah.